Good evening, viewers. Welcome to this special YouTube report on one of the most explosive developments in the Middle East in recent years. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into the escalating tensions following Israel's unprecedented airstrike on Qatar's capital, Doha. As we speak on September 14, 2025, Qatar is gearing up to host an emergency summit of Arab and Muslim leaders, with retaliation against Israel firmly on the agenda. This could mark a turning point in regional dynamics, potentially unraveling fragile peace efforts and reigniting old rivalries. Stay tuned as we unpack the incident, the reactions, and what might come next. This report is over 2,000 words, packed with analysis, quotes, and insights to help you understand the stakes. Let's get started. It was a sunny afternoon in Doha, the gleaming capital of Qatar, when the sky literally fell. At precisely 3:46 p.m., 10 precision-guided missiles from Israeli Air Force fighter jets slammed into a residential compound in the upscale Lektafia district, next to a Waqad petrol station on Wadi Radan Street. The target, a high-level meeting of Hamas's political leadership, including Gaza chief Khalil al-Hayya and other senior negotiators, who were huddled to discuss a fresh U.S.-sponsored ceasefire proposal for the ongoing Gaza war. Israel dubbed the operation, Summit of Fire, or Peskat Haish, in Hebrew, signaling a fiery judgment on those they hold responsible for the October 7, 2023, attacks that killed 1,200 Israelis and sparked the 23-month conflict. Eyewitnesses described a scene straight out of a war movie, multiple explosions echoing through the diplomatic quarter, black smoke billowing over residential areas near schools and embassies, and the ground shaking as debris rained down. Social media footage captured the chaos, sirens wailing, people fleeing, and plumes of smoke rising against Doha's modern skyline. The strike hit a Qatari government-protected complex housing Hamas's political bureau, a site guarded 24/7 by the Emiri Guard since the Gaza war began. Casualties were grim. 6 people lost their lives, including 5 Hamas members, among them, the son of Khalil al-Hayya, 3 bodyguards, and the head of al-Hayya's office, and 1 Qatari Internal Security Force officer, Corporal Badr Saad Mohammed al-Humaydi al-Dosari. Hamas confirmed the deaths but boasted that their top leaders, including al-Hayya, survived unscathed, calling the assassination attempt a failed bid to derail peace talks. Israel, however, claimed the operation was a success in targeting senior leadership directly responsible for the October 7 attacks, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz overseeing it from Shin Bet's command center. The timing was no coincidence. The meeting occurred just days after a Hamas-claimed shooting in Jerusalem killed 6 Israelis at a bus stop, prompting Netanyahu to warn that Hamas will have no place to hide. Israeli officials had been planning this for months, with IDF Chief of Staff Emir stating as early as August 31 that all figures, senior or junior, would be struck wherever found. Qatar, which has hosted Hamas's political office since 2012 at the U.S.'s request, was blindsided. Officials say they received a vague U.S. warning only as the explosions began, via envoy Steve Witkoff, too late to act. This wasn't just any strike, it was Israel's first ever public military action inside a Gulf state, over 1,000 miles from its borders. Qatar, a key U.S. ally hosting the massive Al Udeid Air Base, the largest American military installation in the Middle East, found its sovereignty violated in broad daylight. The implications: a direct challenge to Gulf security and the delicate balance of power in the region. Qatar's response was swift and scorching. Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, in a fiery press conference hours after the blasts, branded the attack state terrorism, a cowardly and reckless criminal assault that violated international law and Qatar's sovereignty. This is a blatant violation of all international laws and norms, posing a serious threat to the security of Qataris and residents, he declared, accusing Netanyahu of sabotaging peace efforts and killing any hope for the hostages still held in Gaza. Al-Thani reserved Qatar's right to retaliate, warning of a decisive moment for the Middle East and calling for a collective response from the whole region against Israel's barbaric actions. Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad al-Thani echoed this, leading a state funeral on September 11 at the Imam Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab Mosque for the victims, including the Qatari officer. Attendees included senior Hamas figures like Osama Hamdan and Izzat al-Rishq, underscoring the deepening ties. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson Majid al-Ansari added that the strike targeted residential buildings housing several members of the political bureau of Hamas, emphasizing Doha's role as a neutral mediator. Protests erupted in Doha, with thousands marching against Israel, chanting slogans and waving Palestinian flags. On X, users amplified the outrage. Huge protest in Qatar against Israel. Posted one account, capturing videos of the crowds. Qatar announced it was reassessing everything regarding its mediation role, potentially freezing talks and pursuing legal action against Netanyahu at international courts. Al-Thani told CNN that Netanyahu needs to be brought to justice, a bold accusation that has inflamed anti-Israeli sentiments across the Arab world. Qatar's hosting of Hamas dates back to U.S. requests, and it has brokered 2 ceasefires in Gaza 2023 and 2025. But now, with its own blood spilled, Doha is pivoting from mediator to aggrieved party, signaling that the era of unchecked Israeli actions is over. The strike didn't just anger Qatar, it unified a fractured Arab and Muslim bloc in a way unseen in years. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry condemns and denounces in the strongest terms the brutal Israeli aggression, affirming full solidarity with Qatar. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, is set to arrive in Doha on September 12, a symbolic show of support from the kingdom that once boycotted Qatar. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, a signatory to the Abraham Accords, summoned Israel's ambassador and called the attack a criminal and treacherous violation. President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan flew to Doha on September 10, embracing Emir Tamim in a display of resolute solidarity, describing it as a risk to Gulf stability. Anwar Gargash, UAE presidential advisor, stated, "The security of the Arab Gulf states is indivisible, we stand heart and soul with Qatar." Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi offered full support, rejecting any sovereignty breach, while Jordan warned of dangerous escalation threatening regional security. Lebanon's foreign ministry called it a violation of an Arab state's sovereignty. Even Yemen's Houthis and Palestinian Islamic Jihad decried it as a blatant criminal act, with Houthi leader Mahdi al-Mashhad urging Arab nations to pay attention to Israel's plans. Iran seized the moment, with its Supreme National Security Council reiterating warnings about Israeli dominance, linking it to their own June 2025 missile strike on Al-Udeid. Turkey condemned it as proof Israel seeks war, not peace, calling it state terrorism. On X, posts like, "Saudi Crown Prince announces open revenge against Israel," went viral, though tempered by skepticism. Big words from MBS, but let's wait for practical follow-up. This unity is rare. Gulf states, once divided by the 2017 Qatar blockade led by Saudi Arabia and UAE, now see the strike as a precedent that could target any of them. Analysts like Andreas Krieg of King's College London note, the summit signals that such aggression can't be normalized. Protests in Qatar and beyond reflect a groundswell of public fury, with ex-users posting, "Qatar leads a unified front after Israel's audacious airstrike." The world reacted with alarm. A UN Security Council emergency session on September 11, requested by Algeria, Pakistan, and Somalia, issued a unanimous statement condemning the strike, expressing solidarity with Qatar, and calling for de-escalation, unusually including U.S. support despite its Israeli alliance. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres labeled it a breach of international law. U.S. President Donald Trump, fresh from a May 2025 visit to Qatar, distanced himself, calling the strike unwise and unacceptable in a heated call with Netanyahu. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said, "Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar does not advance Israel or America's goals." Vice President J.D. Vance echoed frustration, noting it doesn't serve U.S. or Israeli interests. Trump assured Qatar's leader no repeat strikes, but Netanyahu threatened more if Hamas isn't expelled. Europe piled on. UK PM Keir Starmer called it a sovereignty violation risking escalation, after a tough meeting with Israeli President Isaac Herzog, who defended it as necessary to remove deal breakers. France's Emmanuel Macron deemed it unacceptable. Spain and Germany echoed condemnations. The EU stated it breaches international law and Qatar's territorial integrity. Japan's Yoshimasa Hayashi warned it hinders diplomatic efforts. Canada is even re-evaluating ties with Israel. On X, global sentiment mirrored this. Israel's Abraham Accords are at a standstill, noted one analyst. The strike has shattered Gulf faith in U.S. protection, prompting talks of diversifying alliances with China and Turkey. Enter the star of today's news. The 2025 Arab-Islamic Extraordinary Summit, set for September 14 to 15 in Doha. Hosted by Qatar, this joint Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC) gathering invites all 22 Arab states and 57 Muslim-majority nations, including GCC members Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, plus observers from Turkey and China. The agenda: denounce the strike as a sovereignty violation, show solidarity with Qatar, and forge a collective response to deter future attacks. Egypt is pushing a NATO-style Arab military alliance, initially proposed with Israel but now refocused on countering threats from both Israel and Iran. Discussions may cover activating the Peninsula Shield Force, a 1980s GCC defense pact. Retaliation options are limited but potent. Diplomatic isolation at the UN, economic sanctions via Gulf sovereign wealth funds, trillions in Western investments, or withdrawing from mediation. Analysts warn of no outright war declaration, but a unified stance could include oil embargoes or trade limits on Israel. On X, buzz is high. Qatar to host Emergency Islamic Summit to plan response, situation escalate. Another post. The summit will focus on coordinated diplomatic response, humanitarian aid for Gaza, reaffirming Qatar's role. Invitations went out September 11, with MBS, UAE's Sheikh Mohammed, and Egypt's El-Sisi confirmed. Pakistan's PM Shehbaz Sharif is en route, positioning as a champion of Muslim unity. The summit addresses not just the strike but broader threats, like Iran's June attack on Al-Udeid, framing both as assaults on Gulf security. Critics on X are cynical: an emergency summit, empty chairs, empty words, empty spines. But others see potential. Will this summit shift the tide or echo old rhetoric? This strike occurs amid the grinding Gaza war. Over 40,000 Palestinians dead, 1,200 Israelis from October 7, and 100+ hostages still held. Qatar's mediation, alongside Egypt and the U.S., yielded 2 truces, but Netanyahu's action has torched ceasefire hopes. Trump advanced a proposal for full hostage release and war's end, but the strike derailed it. The Abraham Accords, Trump's 2020 normalization push with UAE, Bahrain, and others, are crumbling. UAE warned against West Bank annexation. Saudi ties hinge on Palestinian statehood. Gulf states question U.S. guarantees after failing to prevent the strike, eyeing China for security ties. Israel's pattern: strikes in Lebanon, killing Hezbollah's Nasrallah, Yemen, Syria, shows no bounds. Netanyahu's defiance: Israel's long arm will act anywhere. This summit could redefine the Middle East. A unified retaliation, sanctions, alliances, might isolate Israel economically and diplomatically. But constraints abound. Gulf economies tied to the West, U.S. bases provide security, and military options risk escalation. Experts like those at CNN note, few viable military options, but a collective response under consultation. For Gaza, hostages' hopes dim. Al-Thani met families that morning. Broader risks: Houthi retaliation, Iranian opportunism, or a revived axis of resistance. On X, Israel bombs Qatar, after Trump admin lured them to peace conference. Politically incorrect but substantiated. Israel's strike, while tactically bold, strategically foolish, alienating allies, emboldening foes, per WSJ reports of Trump's anger. Gulf diversification to China could erode U.S. influence. As the summit unfolds, watch for outcomes, resolutions, pacts, or rhetoric. Viewers, what do you think? Retaliation or restraint? Like, subscribe, comment below. This is a fluid story, updates coming. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay safe.